Hey, Christopher, the podcast Life as a. Are you interested in professional puppetry? Are you, or were you a fan of Sesame Street growing up? If you answered yes to even one of those questions, you have to stick around today. I have a doozy of an episode lined up for you. You're about to hear my full conversation with Leslie Carrara-Rudolph, aka Abby Cadabby from Sesame Street. And she stopped by Life as a to share insights on her profession, on her career, and a bunch more. She's a 6-time Emmy Award nominee, so you're not going to want to miss this. In this episode, we dive into the world of professional puppetry, Leslie's inspirational backstory, plus we even get an inside look at a day in the life on Sesame Street. Oh, and by the way, there are a few cute and cuddly characters who do stop by. We cover a lot in this conversation, and trust me, you're going to love it from start to finish. Now, before we get going here, one last request. I would love a like, a comment, or subscribe at any point in this video. Those small actions mean a lot, especially to small channels like this one. All right, well, I think it is time to launch into this, so why don't we? I have this first segment lined up, and it's called Coloring Wikipedia. It's a segment where I just read off a definition of something that relates to what the guest is all about. And the term that I went with here from Wikipedia is puppeteer. Now, I will forewarn you, in speaking with your husband, Paul, who's also on Sesame Street, a vocal music director and composer, I came to learn that a puppeteer isn't necessarily the best way of looking at your work. There's actually a better term, a Muppet performer, that better encapsulates it all. But anyway, let me read off this definition, and then maybe you could dissect it for us and thrash it and fill us in. Sound okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so here we go. Puppeteer. A puppeteer is a person who manipulates an inanimate object called a puppet to create the illusion that the puppet is alive. The puppet is often shaped like a human, animal, or legendary creature. The puppeteer may be visible to or hidden from the audience. There it is. Again, I know it falls woefully short. And maybe you could, like I said, you could go after it.
Yes, woefully short. Well, I think what you got there is manipulating an object, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So basically bringing something to life. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that looks like anything. It could be found object puppetry. I just took a greeting card and like a lot of times, like this is a puppet. This is a bear cut out of a card. I do this a lot with kids. Or doctors or someone said, I don't have a puppet. And I'm like, there's one right here. There's one actually right on the end of your wrist, right? So it doesn't even, hey, how you doing? I'm just, I'm moving this in a way that forms a character and evokes a feeling or an emotion or a reaction. So I think what happens with puppetries or it's about, I think, developing a relationship with an object that you're bringing to life, right? So if I were to take, this pencil and I'm moving it, and it's very excited and very rigid, or if I had my pencil peek in and I had a relationship where I was like, come here, and then it goes out, and I'm like, so come on, and I'm moving it in a way where it's like, it's slow. It's going to now sniff my hand. I can turn a pencil into a dog or like, oh my gosh, this pencil is now wagging its tail, so to speak. Yeah. So I feel like for me, puppeteering, and since I fell into it, it's mostly about creating characters that may not be something that you perform as a person on stage. So like my show, my one of my very first shows called Life in Other People's Shoes. So I would put on a pair of shoes and then I would assume their identities and stuff. And the whole way I moved physically and added my voice to it. I'm wearing a pair of checkerboard Vans right now. My hair's in my face and I have a skateboard in my hand and I'm totally chilling. As suppose if I picked up a pair of nice padded slippers and I would move differently. So I feel like we physically can see ourselves just with our own movement. I can even say like, oh my gosh, somebody right now is puppeteering me. Oh my gosh, they're having me do really crazy things.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
so I think that the definition doesn't necessarily have to be a person or a human, or we just did a whole workshop where we gave kids sponges, pipe cleaners, found objects, and they could create a wolf or a pig or a. So
Hmm.
I think it's mostly being able to create a character with your voice. I always use three tools when I'm working with kids. It's your voice, your body, and your imagination.
Yeah.
And your voice isn't just how you use it, how quiet you are, how deep your voice may be, it's, and your body, you know, like a lot of clowning and physical comedy or movement. But the imagination is really believing in what you're doing. And I
Mm,
think that is the key. The imagination is like the glue that holds it together. Because if
mm,
I could do a character, but if I didn't believe in it, like
yeah.
for Abby,
Yeah.
Abby is a fairy. And when I bring her out, like kids, it's not just the fact that she has wings or she's
Right.
laughing or how she's feeling. The way children play with Abby, as opposed to the way they play with Lolly, my sock puppet, they're two visuals, but they're
Mm,
two different personalities with similar voices, obviously,
yeah.
which Lolly's very bitter about. But Lolly's like, yeah, here's what I'm doing, and that's gonna be great. There's different. I know
Yeah.
this is a long answer to
No,
a
no,
very
it's great.
big question because I fell into puppetry late, and even me, sometimes I'm like, well, the majority of my work comes from because I found puppetry, but I
Yeah.
realized I was a puppeteer before I was a puppeteer on Sesame Street.
Mm,
I think I was a performer. And when they say Muppet performer, specifically, that means somebody that works with Muppets because
yeah.
Muppet is by the Henson, it's a Jim Henson term,
Right.
right? So does that
Yeah.
make
One.
sense?
Yeah, it does completely. Like almost to the point where like you're losing yourself in that character, in that character's universe, really. Like, is that kind of a good way of looking at it? Like to really bring out the best of what that character offers is, or how that character is going to connect with an audience or with an individual. You yourself as a performer have to lose yourself in that character's world, in that person's world,
Yeah.
in a sense. Yeah.
I think like I always say it's not about me, it's through me. And
Mm,
I feel like um for you know you can be a good manipulator, but if you don't really have the heart in your hand, my uncle, well, uncle like in quotes, Chuck McCann, he used to always say, put your heart in your hand. And if you don't do the work to understand what your character feels, then you're moving a puppet with a cute voice and
right.
you're moving it, oh yeah, going across the scene.
Yeah.
But why is that character there? So it's really about believing where you are, who you are, and what you're doing, the who, what, and where, which is
Yeah.
storytelling. So
Yeah.
I think all we really are storytellers. And, I started in theater and I also started with, working with kids and creating ways to engage with ourself as a character. So
Hmm.
I think that's probably the best, I think,
Yeah.
is really knowing what you're doing as opposed to, you can honestly, you can tell too, right? You can
Oh,
tell
yeah.
when you can connect to a character when it's just seems like,
Going through the motions, right? Yeah, when
yeah,
there's
like,
more of an
okay, that's
intentionality towards it and heart
yeah.
behind it, and yeah, yeah, definitely, 100%.
And I
I think.
think that's what like attracted me to Sesame Street. Growing up, I was outside a lot. I'm the youngest in my family. I was a surprise, not an accident, but I think I was a little bold, an incoming. Um, But when Sesame Street, when I first found it, my dad being an artist and a teacher, and my mom very creative and sewed all her clothes, and my brothers and sisters. When I saw Sesame Street, and my grandpa, I always tell this story. My grandpa and grandma lived with us, and I remember my grandpa pinching the ends of a snapdragon. They're my favorite flowers.
Mm.
If you pinch the edges of a snapdragon, it'll talk to you. I'll go, "Psst, come here. I want to tell you something." And I remember once I saw that, the whole world changed for me.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, everything can be something.
Yeah.
And so when I saw Sesame Street and I saw a world where I was like, well, that's what it's like inside my head, I could, it helped me to learn, it helped me
Yeah.
engage. From early onset age, I was always involved with the arts because my dad wanted to be an animator for Disney. And so he moved the family to California while he was in school. But he ended up being a teacher. So he was always like, had art projects. His students were painting our Volkswagen. I mean, we were California hippies, crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
not hippies, but we were very artistic family,
Yeah.
outside, intergenerational. So, and my brothers dressed me up. My brothers and sisters would dress me and wear clothes. And so I always, our community was always had arts available to young people, the theater programs, park programs, and they were affordable, if not just pay what you can.
Mm.
So I feel like that artistic spirit was nurtured in me. And so I was in a theater company at the age of 16, theater for young audiences, till I was like 23. And it was like storytelling, improv, characters. Sometimes we used puppets. Also did a lot of theater. So, but I also worked in the Parks and Rec department and got involved with a lot of kids at risk. And I struggle with my own learning disabilities. I have a perception processing disorder, which makes it reading a challenge for me. So a lot of the things that made me who I am, when I went to San Francisco State, I was able to design a major that was called Child Development Through the Arts. So I studied child psychology, therapeutic recreation. Therapeutic recreation is designing programs for kids at risk, or
Mm.
programs or kids with different disabilities, or hospitalized, or seniors. It's designing programs for anybody who might have an obstacle to overcome, or in foster homes, or emotional or physical, or things that
Yeah. Yeah.
aren't necessarily the mainstream people
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
all in the
Which in a
past
way is
train.
which in a way is kind of like what Sesame Street has been built upon too, right? In a sense, like that was
Yeah,
part of the history of that program, was to reach a lot of people, and
yeah,
people that,
diversity, inclusivity,
yeah, right.
no beats hell, right?
Was that
Like you,
something? Sorry, really quick question just popped in my head. I mean, was that something that at that age, when you were getting to that point, you're starting to think of your career, like, if I design a program that highlights some of these things where I get these skills, not only like theatrically, but then also too to like mash or mesh up well with like a program like Sesame Street, was that always the end goal, was to get onto that
oh,
program?
well, no,
No.
I mean, that was a magical surprise. I've always
Okay.
wanted to have my own kids show my whole life. I wanted to have a camp for kids. It's been
All
my
right.
dream to have a camp for kids my whole life.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
and it's written everywhere, every journal you pull out. There's like every journal has like a mission statement with me, and
Yeah.
and I've got ridiculous amounts of journals. They all
Okay.
have like everything
That
is
was the
always.
mission. Yeah.
Yeah, the mission was to have a camp for kids, or to have my own kids show. And I
Mm.
did. I designed a show that was a live show for Disney. And
Hmm.
but that's what I've always
Yeah.
done. I'm always best when I'm live interacting with kids. That's my favorite. My goal still is to have a kid show. Like I
Mm.
still, but then I realized, like, well, I'm a walking kid show, which is why I designed Humor with a Heart. It's like we may not be on the air, but when I'm standing in front of kids, it is a it is a play date. It is Mary Poppins meets Monty Python play date that you just have got to get ready, because I'm going to
Yeah.
pick up a pencil and anything can come from this. This is my
Yeah.
unicorn horn and we're going to have a blast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yes, I've always wanted a kid show, and I ended up working on a lot of kids shows. And then when Sesame Street had auditions all over the country for the fairy, I was like, you know, people were calling me going like, I think
You got to do this.
for this on audition. I was like, well, I just said that I would do a program with this local theater. Maybe I should. And the local theater goes, you crazy? Audition for Sesame
Go.
Street. This is who you are. So when
Yeah.
I auditioned for Sesame Street, and by that time I had worked with the Muppets, like I never knew anything. Here's the thing. When I am of a certain age that there was no YouTube. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a phone. There was no Instagram. There was no social media. I didn't have a computer until I was in my 30s.
Mm.
One, I couldn't afford to. Two, my brain struggled anyway. And the only reason I had a computer is because Disney gave me an office when I designed my kid show. And I literally was
I need
like,
a computer,
it was
just for the
like
looks at
Zoolander.
least.
No, I had to call my friend. I go, will you come show me how to turn this on? In Zoolander where they're like, wait, the information's in the computer? That was me. I was like, I don't know what to do. My mom helped me
Yeah.
graduate college.
Yeah.
I would handwrite all my papers
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
would type them up for me. I mean,
Okay.
it was that. So when I grew up, I was like, I just saw the characters as characters. I didn't
Hmm.
think what's going on underneath. I knew that.
Okay.
I saw interviews, but my goal and my dream is always to reach children through the arts
Yeah.
because my brother, when I was 10 and a half, 11, my brother rode a motorcycle to heaven. So we had a loss in the family,
Mm.
had a lot of loss and a lot of um, dark things happened to me as a youth.
Yeah.
And um, and the arts were always there for me. So when I couldn't control my own life or what was going around me, if I was in a theater, if I was in a show, I knew what was going to happen for the next 2 hours. Like if
Yeah.
I was in a theater thing, I knew my part. I knew how it was going
Hmm.
to end. I knew that I was making a difference and I was able to feel a bunch of things. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. This is helping me balance what's happening in my life at
Right.
home or
Yeah.
what's happening to me as a person. So
Mm.
I've always been driven by the mission of creating a character that is there for kids or adults to help them feel seen and heard
Mm.
and to be a
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that goes into every character that I do. So I say I'm a character actress sometimes my characters are puppets, sometimes they're me, sometimes they're drawings, sometimes they're stories, sometimes they're songs or poems.
Hmm.
Ultimately, when I went, so Sesame Street uses all those tools, music, storytelling, puppets, people. So I was like, it feels like home to me.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
but some people when they go about television puppetry, they take a class and they take it, none of those classes were available to me. It was like, you
Mm.
got this job, you better watch and learn. And
Yeah.
that's what I had to do. I just had to teach myself and
Yeah.
it was thrown into the deep end and there
Yeah.
was a whole lot of women. There
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
but they were great, wonderful people who I
Yeah.
look up to. Fran Brill,
Yeah.
Kathy Mullen, and
Mm.
Louise Gold, those are the ones. And then more after that on Sesame Street. So
Right. I mean, it sounds
all the
like,
women on Sesame Street are amazing.
yeah, sounds like to me like a bit of an unorthodox approach into it all, as opposed to how people might go about it nowadays and like spending years and years of specialized training and whatnot.
They
You're
don't
coming
even
in at
spend
this with a
years and
whole
years.
different angle. But I
The
mean,
thing
that unto itself, I think is
well, I'm saying
inspirational.
too, but the television puppetry is specific style of puppeteering. So I should
Yeah.
probably make that clear to the podcasters. If there's puppeteering that happens on stage. Like if you are out there and you have an opportunity to go to any puppetry festivals, go because
Mhm.
it is such a huge art form. Like there's so many different. There's shadow puppetry. There's marionettes. There's um, black box puppetry. There's found object. There's tabletop. There's bunraku. There's such a huge thing. So when I got into the Muppets, I was like, I joined the Puppetry Guild. immediately because I was like, I don't know what I've gotten myself into.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a television style puppeteer, now there's a ton of resources for you. So,
There you go.
so don't think like you have to study for years and years. I mean, it's good. I'm still studying, and
Yeah.
it's been 18 years on Sesame Street, 28 years since Muppets Tonight. But it is a specific style, just performing where see right here, this is
Green.
the theater
Yeah.
screen. This is off stage. This is on stage. This is downstage. This is upstage. So Jim Henson and like a lot of times we're cut off at the knees, but this is the theater right here.
Yeah. You're framing it all for the screen essentially, right? And using all of that to your best, all the advantages, I suppose, that it offers, and then working around some of the things that it doesn't necessarily offer, I guess. Speaking of which, I do have this other segment I'd like to step into, a day in the life. And we're on the topic of Sesame Street. I'd love to know, and I'm sure listeners would love to know, like, what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh boy. On Sesame Street or on me?
Well, let's start with Sesame Street, and then maybe we could transition over to the other.
Okay, a day in the life on Sesame Street. Okay,
Yeah.
so it starts with like, if I'll just take you through a week, right?
Sure.
So so what happens when we are in shooting our shows, we'll get a week long like a cast of like, we shoot a show a day, and then we also usually do wraparounds, the extra things depending on how the day goes. And so you'll look at your schedule, you get a call time, and it'll say, okay, Leslie's going to be Abby Cadabby, and then a background penguin and a tomato and an extra chicken in Hooper store, like,
Yeah.
And I get really excited when I get to do the incidental characters, because it means like, I get to have fun, or Tango.
Yeah.
And whenever I play Tango, I'm so excited because I'm like, I'm memorized. I just bark and sniff and play with people like I'm a puppy all day. So anyway, so we look at our call time. For me, I walk to Sesame Street because I live in Queens, so it's a 20-minute commute. I walk. My day in the life takes me past a school yard, and I say hi to Denise, the crossing guard, and talk to the kids. And I'm like, I'm working for you. I giggle. And then I go in, I check in at the Kaufman Studios gate. We go upstairs to the third floor. We have our costumers there, our makeup, everybody is on site. The puppet wranglers is very exciting, super busy in the morning. People are getting their craft service breakfasts. They have, some people get little dressing rooms, the fancier people. And then we have a Muppet green room where everybody checks in, and we throw our coats everywhere, and someone's like, look at this video, this is so cool. And like, so everybody is just kind of like buzzing around, and then we go on set and we check out our puppets, or the wrangler will say, Lars or Lars will go, how do you want this? It says that Abby flies in. Do you want me to do clappers? Which means how do you want your puppet rigged? If you have a prop, or they'll say, do you have an assist? And I'll like, there's not enough puppeteers. I don't have an assist today. So please rig my hands so I don't have to have somebody extra with me. And then you find out there's puppets that have live hands, which you always have an assist. So what means is that it's magical what we do, but we don't do it alone. So you'll have somebody that's with you, that like Abby has. Someone will say, oh my gosh, Abby has 3 spells today. Who's with you? And so Abby has her Wanda. So Abby is right-handed. That's for a reason. It's so I do my right hand in my puppet and my left hand, and my assist is going to do all the magic.
Yeah.
That hand, and then put the wand down. And the reason I like it that way is because Abby doesn't have any IMAX. She can't blink. She has facial recognition, and well, not recognition, but she can't move her face. So I use my extra hand as a way to gesture. It's a good thing for Italian. And I use that for acting. And I can't ask my assist to know what I'm going to do physically if I want to rip out someone. So usually we go through the script. Whoever my assist, I'll say, okay, these are the things we're going to do. Please be aware of this. We'll work it out. So we have read the scripts usually at least once or twice ahead of time and given our notes, our puppet notes and our performance notes. Like, I think it would be easier if we did this. We always love when there's a lot of different style of directors, but when your director is also a puppeteer like Matt or Noel or somebody, it's really nice because they ahead of time are going to know how they're going to bring you in. If you have a director who's never worked with puppets before and they're shadowed and stuff,
it must be so intimidating for that person, I've got to say.
It's just a longer day because they don't know how to problem solve, or they don't understand yet, because they're learning, right?
Yeah.
And they'll work with the puppet captain. They'll go to the puppet captain and say, hey, is it possible to bring this character in there? And, or if Matt's directing, he goes, I don't know where I'm going to fit you coming into the scene. And this happened last year. I go, Matt, I'm a fairy, Abby has a wing mech. That means I have an assist that I'm doing this that makes Abby's wings fly.
Yeah.
I said, how about I fly in from the corner and then fly back out? Because there's no room on me. Because you imagine if you have 3 puppets, right? And they all have assists. So that's 3 puppeteers with their assists. That's another thing. Then you have 6 people on the ground. And we're not just on the ground. If we're moving, we're on these little things called rollies. But they're like they're these little cushions on wood blocks that have rolling, so we can roll in and out because we have to be shorter than everybody else. So it's just crazy.
The logistics of it. Yes.
So a puppeteer goes like, oh, like a new director goes, wait, Alan comes in and someone comes. So it's like this incredible machine. What's difficult is, and also imagine this, we can't see, the puppets don't have actual eyes. So if an actor can say, look in camera A, B, or C, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. They just move their heads, right? But we don't have actual eyes on our puppets. So we can't spot those things. So we have television monitors
down below
that shows the shot, right? So we're not even looking up. We're looking down at a monitor where a puppet comes in. And I might be like, oh my gosh, Abby's way back here. And someone will say, you're too small. Can you come forward? I'm like, I can't. There's 4 people there. Okay, can you come from the side? So a lot of what happens is, if you're used to this, now, this happens in every scene. So imagine a script that has, let's say it has 8 scenes, and one's in the garden, one's in Hooper's store, one's on the steps, one's by Big Bird's nest. So it's such a huge, family effort. Then the camera's got to move. There's a jib shot. Oh, by the way, we caught your head in the shot. Oh no, I have to get lower. That means I have to go on my back more. When I play Tango, I have to be really low. So I have an even lower rolly that gives me a backrest to run through the scene. So
it's quite physical, right?
Yes,
quite physical.
It's like that's when they give away the Emmys, I was like, listen, nobody can collect an Emmy on their own. It is a team effort.
Oh yeah.
That means okay, we're going to move to Abby's Fairy Garden. That means Barbara and her whole electric team has to bring all the television monitors. She has to wait to see what the director is going to put puppets. She's waiting. She sees it. Then she's like, okay, I'm going to guess they're going to need to look here and here. And then I'm going to say, guess what, Barbara? I need another monitor behind Snuffy. I can't see around Snuffy's butt, And so
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yes. So that, and that day takes you to lunch. Okay. Then we'll say, we might get to the point and he goes, oh, we don't have time to shoot this. Everybody leave everything here. And then on top of that, we have scripts, right? Well, because we shoot a show a day, we can't possibly memorize it. I try to memorize as much as possible because my learning challenge is, and people know me that I switch words around. I try to really know what I'm doing, because not only am I looking at my puppet, I'm looking at my words, which are right taped to my monitor. There'll be changes. So that's why we'll have to write changes in. So we break for lunch. So it's usually, during COVID, they fed us, but usually it's like a walk away lunch for an hour. And then we come back and we do it again until we're done with the show. And then if there's time, we do little, what they call inserts. And, where we just today on Sesame Street, it's all about pineapples. And an apple comes in. Did you say apple? No, we said pineapples. Okay.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
it's full on. Like that's one of the impressions that I'm taking away from all of this. Like the physicality we just spoke about, and all the other things that are going into it. The supporting performers or the people that are working with you to operate different parts of the body, the hand, for example, in your case with Abby.
Goes back to belief, right?
Yeah, it's all part of the magic. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to believe. They have to trust that you're focused, that you're paying attention, that you know your lines, you know your spot, that you've done your homework, and then they have to sometimes, my assistant will say, oh, I'm so sorry, her hand wasn't in the right spot, but everybody else was doing good, right? So then you have to say, do we have time to do it again? We don't. Well, it'll be okay. Therefore, you know what I mean? It was like, well, we did the best. And, I understand. I feel like that's why I love live performance, because it's not like animation where everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Everything is executed. Everything is, it's real. You can feel the effort, I guess, what you can see. You can see that these characters are really committed to telling the story and being in the scene, right? And that energy, I really think it matters when you look at a show that's puppetry. Animation is great. Bluey is great. Disney is wonderful. It's
just different.
It's just different. And I just feel like that's what makes it special, because you're connected. Your heart is in your hand.
It's a whole different type of magic that's created, I think. There's a different level of realism in a way, I think, that when it's done well, when it's done at its highest level, which is the world that you certainly live within, day in and day out, it sounds like, I think that it brings it to life in a different way and makes it special. I mean, that's representative of what Sesame Street is, certainly. And then also a lot of the other work that you're part of. Maybe we could really quickly hear, about that as well. Like, what does the day in the life look like for you when you're not performing on Sesame Street?
Oh, same. No. My brain, which I happen to have here, I named Doyle. I have to keep him on a leash because I have an overactive imagination. So my brain is constantly thinking, so what usually happens is I wake up and I take a moment to journal, write down my ideas, put a to-do list down, depending what I'm doing, there'll be my to-do list today, write notes for, try to swim and work out, write notes. So I usually have to write down my to-do list of things that when I'm doing. If I'm doing this past weekend, I did a kids Comic-Con. So I have a company called Humor with a Heart. and I founded with my creative partner, Jamie Donmoyer. We started doing live radio shows in the School for the Arts, Lolly's Radio Playdate.
Oh, fun.
Uh, I just, like I said, an idea will come out. I'll either write it in a journal entry, but for the Kids Comic Con, I was there as a representative for creating characters, and that could be through artwork. Usually I teach kids how to draw, or accessing stories, helping them access their imagination. So I was like, okay, today I have to pack who am I gonna pick today? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take Lolly with me because I'm gonna do a story with Lolly. I'm gonna take Granny Doc, that puppet. I'm gonna take my Sasquatch arm, and I'm gonna take my brain. Oh, and I might take Polar Doodle. So when I wake up and I see which of my characters is going to work, what they're going to bring today. And then I also think about the audience. I'm going to have teenagers, I'm going to have little kids, I'm going to have adults, and seniors. Okay. All of those characters has to relate to all those demographics. So then I go to my pad and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a drawing exercise. Maybe I'll do this. So then my to-do list gets split in half. And then I break up what I'm going to do as a performer. Then I got to figure out how I'm going to get there. I don't want to lug all that. I'm going to take a lift, or I can call somebody and see if they're going to drive somewhere, or I can... So then I have to figure out how to get myself there. Then I'm like, do I have a table? No, you don't have a table. You're in that corner on the floor. Okay, can I have a chair? Can I at least have a chair? I went to Cooney. I spoke at my friend's animation class, and it was a character talk. So I went to Cooney and I go, what do you have? He goes, I have a rolling chair and a whiteboard. I go, okay. Or if I'm like, I need a piece of foam core because I'm going to do some cartooning. Is there anything I can draw on? So that's the other thing. So my list will change by where I'm going. Then I get myself there. And then this happened to me last weekend, not this past weekend, the weekend before. I went on a car, a plane, a train, and another car to get to Bloomington Normal to do one of my talks called The Oz in You. And I thought it was going to be for, high school students, junior high. And I get there, there's 2 8-year-olds, there's 4 80-year-olds, there's neurodiverse population. I was like, well, everything that I planned, forget it.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to see what we have in common and write something there. So not only I can try to plan, but that doesn't work. So that's my day in the life. And then I get home and I'm done. Usually by 4:00, I've used up all my words, and I'm not smart. I'm like, don't ask me any hard questions. Don't judge me if I have popcorn for dinner because I'm eating, and that's it. And then I look at something fun and mindless, and then maybe I make something out of pipe cleaners.
There you go.
But I almost always, also, he's not there, but it also involves lots of belly rubs for my dog, Newhart.
Well, finding that balance, absolutely, it's needed. And it sounds like to me like the world that you live in, like it truly takes everything, like physically, but mentally, like your heart, like everything is going into it to achieve. Again, we keep bringing up this word, but like magic, and it sounds like that's what it's all about. Obviously, like in doing the work well, you have to be able to create that, and in order to do that, what I'm gathering here is the combination of all these things in unison, working with others, perhaps at times just on your own at other points. But it does involve like so much to bring this thing, this character, this idea, this inanimate object, sometimes, whatever it is, to life. This kind of leads me into this other question that I have here. Is that, in speaking with any type of professional, whether we're talking, performative arts or within finance, for example, whatever we're talking here, like I think we as individuals put our own stamp on our careers, right? Like we as an individual bring our own idiosyncrasies to it and we own it in that way. But then also it works in reverse, I think, where the work can sometimes stamp you, like it affects how you run your personal life and how you look at the world, worldviews, all of this stuff. So what I'm curious about here is like, how does the work, well, how do you put your stamp on the work that you're doing? For example, with Abby or Lolly or some of the other characters. And then also, how did those characters impact you as a person? How does that change the way that you interact with the world? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes total sense. First of
Yeah.
all, thank you for these questions. They're really amazing.
Thank you.
Um, I will say that I even have here, I'm going to just read something that was, I get these things called incoming. And I think it's just because have I experienced loss at a young age? I've always felt really temporary. I
Mm,
don't know, like for a while when I was little, I thought, oh my gosh, my brother died when he was 20. I was like, my other brother, what if like he doesn't make it past 20? Or, I lost like it's weird how ideas get locked with your heart. And so
yeah.
I've always felt maybe that, and even in Hamilton, there's that line, why do you write like you're running out of time, like you're running out of time?
Mm,
Or, Jim Henson, it's interesting, he lost his brother as well, and I feel like when, for me, I've always believed like I've always felt temporary, so every day could be my last. And maybe that's my fairy goddaughter says, you have OCD, over creative disorder. But it was just like, well, every moment could be a moment, and that drives me. And I always say, never underestimate the power of joy. So I think that my stamp in life is to spread joy, like to bring joy to each moment. And I do some very difficult work with the J Fund Foundation, which is like St. Jude, sitting bedside with kids that are battling for their lives. And I even like wrote a whole song. My friend wrote a song for me called Believe, that in a moment, you have to believe that you are balancing the hard stuff with a moment of joy or laughter. So
mm,
that drives everything I do. And it was like a warrior's soul is surrounded by truth, uh, and following divine creativity. She is guided by light from above. Love, always love, no matter what. Your mission is joy. And I like almost everything I do, joy is at the center of that.
yeah.
So I think that's what impacts my work. One of the thing that impacted me as Abby is we had some differently abled children, diverse abilities. I like to call it diverse abilities. I have some friends that are disabled and say, don't call me differently abled, I'm disabled. And friends like, don't call me disabled, I'm differently abled. It's like, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
know that when I go into a school and when I go into a place, that I just try to be present. And
Mm,
I don't address gender, I don't address diversity, I don't address anything. I address brains and hearts.
mm,
So I come in with my brain on a leash and say, my brain wants to meet your brain. And my brain does all these crazy things, and I just try to help my brain be positive, because if your brain goes into a negative space, sometimes you can say things that can hurt you. Kids that don't either are cutting or disorders or do things, your brain can hurt you. And
mm,
we want to help our brain follow our heart so we can do, positive things. And I've had kids come up and say, what do you do when your brain gets into a dark place? And I said, well, I either draw or I force myself to write a poem. I force myself to find words for what I'm feeling and forcing myself to rhyme. So, so I know this is a complex
no,
question, but
no, that's great. Yeah.
one of my favorite moments for Abby, And there's so many because
Sure.
Abby, in the last 18 years, she's gone through divorce. I remember when like that was like a big thing. And in my mind, Abby has three dads.
Hmm.
That's where I'm at. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but and singing Big Feelings. And I also remember this one meeting, this little girl, she was quadriplegic and she was drawing with her mouth. And I went to our wranglers. The wranglers are the ones that rig our puppets. They work super hard. They dress the puppets, they
Hmm.
rig the puppets, they are constantly working hard. I said, do you mind if I put a crayon in Abby's mouth? I know it's going to probably get on her tongue, but I think she needs to draw with this little girl. And it's
Hmm.
my favorite all-time moment is they're just drawing hearts with
Hmm.
their mouths. And I was like, so that moment drives me when I went to San Francisco State and I put myself through school. My parents helped me as much as they could, but then I did window painting, birthday parties, you know, and I remember showing up at a birthday party and they didn't tell me that their son was in a wheelchair. And all of my activities, I was like, well, I'm going to change all my activities now.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
going to be different. So I think those moments, my puppets can do things that I can't do. And also when they're smaller. Polar Doodle is one of my characters that is just, I'll get Polar Doodle right now. Polar Doodle, I'm dressed right now as a reindeer. Okay, Polar Doodle is just a store-bought folk manist puppet that I put little puffs on and
Yeah.
told people he was part polar bear, part poodle. Hi there. Hi, Christopher. I'm dressed as a reindeer, but I'm not, but I'm so cute. Look at my booty, isn't it the cutest thing you've ever seen? Don't you want to hug me? I'm so cute. I just am adorable. And that's Polar Doodle has no other purpose other than being cute.
Yeah.
People will yes, I want to hug you. Like a
Yeah.
college student, I have a letter from a college student who said, I'm really gonna miss Polar Doodle. I was only in their class for 3 hours.
Jeez.
But-
Yeah.
And she asked if she could see Polar Doodle before I went away. And she
Yeah.
hugged. I
Yeah.
was like, so people have that childlike wonder, that joy that they're always trying to access and they know it's in there. I always
Yeah.
feel like when I have Abby or Lolly or Granny Dot or any of these puppets on, it's like, and when people come on Sesame Street, oh my gosh, it's like, I don't know if you have ever seen Kids in the Hall Brain Candy where they take you to your
Yeah.
happy place, but it's like their pilot light might have been out, right?
Mm.
When you get older, your pilot light goes out or something,
Mm.
pilot light of joy. And that when they walk on set, somehow it gets lit. And they're like, and you could
Brought to
just,
life.
people have I still cry
Yeah.
when I get on Sesame Street because I
Yeah.
feel like there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I keep returning to this word in my mind. It's just like magic, the whole universe that you're part of and that you're promoting and that you're bringing to life. It's centered around this idea of magic, and it affects people in so many different ways. And like I think people that are watching this and taking it in the way that you just described it, but then also as a professional, as somebody like yourself who's involved in it all, I can see like your heart and soul is in this. Like it's oozing out of you. It's who you are, and I can definitely see like how this profession has impacted you in so many ways. And I would venture to guess in a lot of positive ways. And then like this brings you true joy, and it comes across like loud and clear. Audio sense and visually. All that you're sharing. In this episode, in this conversation, like I can definitely see, I guess what I'm getting at here of how this has impacted you and how it could impact others, if they certainly, go to the lengths that you've gone to within their career and are able to achieve what they've, or what you've been able to achieve. So yeah, I absolutely love this. I mean, I think listeners are going to be gobbling up this conversation and probably listening to it 2 to 3, 4 times over and digging into all the little bits of insights that you've shared here. I do have one other question though. I mean, as far as, people who are looking to get into this field, we spoke about this lightly already. Like there's one way of going through like school and like theater perhaps, and maybe combining a few different elements there. But then also too, like there's certainly like just YouTube. There's different ways of going about it. Like what would be your advice to someone who's looking to break into this whole universe?
Okay. Well, okay, so you need a toolkit, right? To be able to have, like, if you're going to be a surgeon, you have to learn about, like, the whole body, right? What the whole system does. So it's the same thing for puppeteering. So whether it's television puppeteering or television puppeteering is specific, and they are definitely classes that you can take for monitors. They call it monitor work. So that's the technical aspect. So, for that specific style of puppeteering, to know where to come in on the frame, where to find eye focus, how to make your puppet look like it's walking on the ground, so there's specific looking at each of the areas of the actual
Yeah.
screen. I'm doing this like with my hand on my own in the middle of the screen, and going, right? So there's that physical, technical stuff, which is like the basics of stagecraft, right? Knowing
Mm,
downstage, upstage, left, right, all those things, walking, running, moving. And then if you're going to be a physical performer, right, you have to take dance, and movement and those kind of things. And then there's the vocal performance, right? So you should, study voice and things like that. So that's so if your puppet has to do all those things on stage, then you have to do all those things.
yeah.
So my advice to people is, like, yes, you can study the monitor work to do an actual physical puppetry, but you're actors, and it's even harder because you have to bring something to life that is literally lifeless, right? And you have
Yeah.
to be able to care about it. So I would say you study acting. um, think about, like that means, like, if you learn a monologue, right, and you learn to dissect what the meaning of that monologue is, or you take a scene study class, because it's not just about you. It's a relationship class, so you have to take acting class. Absolutely. You should take voice lessons. Learn to stretch your vocal chops, be able to carry a tune, and also realize songs are monologues, right? It's
Mhm.
not just sounding, oh, don't I sound beautiful? What am I saying? So learn what the song means. I would suggest improv classes, because one of the things you need to know is your own sense of humor, right? Don't just imitate something that you saw that was funny without knowing why it's funny or why it made you laugh.
Right. Right.
What makes you laugh? What do you think is funny? Come up with your own character. And then, when I do the character workshops, it's just the basic things, like, what's your name? What's your favorite thing? What's your most embarrassing moment? Like, know your own character. So
Hmm.
so when we do these workshops, which I just did one, we have these little worksheets, like, come up with an alien character, come up with a supervillain, come up with a whimsical creature. By the way, what about you? So you're the most intense character. Look at me. You could see, like, obviously I don't care about my hair. I'm like, whatever has a hat of a reindeer, Nightmare Before Christmas. What do I have in my pocket? My
Yeah.
to-do
Yeah.
list, you know, um, why do I have a bear on a stick? All these things like, so what do I need to get through the day? I got to make sure I drink water, and I have this new alphabet mug. Like, you could just know about me based on what's
Yeah.
in the background, including this corgi wallet that I just got. But so those little detail things, like, so once upon a time there was a little girl who had a reindeer on her hat and hearts on her ears, and she took her corgi wallet out for a walk and realized that she needed to get water in her alphabet mug, because she was supposed to meet a hedgehog for dinner. So when those little specific details
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when you also have to understand why are things in your story. So a kid goes, excuse me, why did she have a reindeer on her hat? Oh, I'll tell you why. Her last name was Rudolph. And she, well,
Mhm.
why was she drinking out of an alphabet bug? She was obsessed with Wicked. So think of when you put together your character of a kid raising their hand, go, why, why,
Yeah.
why? Have a reason for every question they will ask. So then you become a writer, a storyteller, a singer, a creator. So all those things. And the more you do the improv class, and that's what it all comes down to character for me. You could
Mm.
be one of the most brilliant manipulators there is, but if you don't know, if it doesn't have a heartbeat in it,
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
have all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
It's
it's all got to
fun.
come together.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it's totally fun. So, you can look online and get monitor classes. And then my dad, um, full-blood Italian. My dad, he's right here. He looks like an artist. My dad went back to school. He had four kids, right? He had to
Yeah.
read like he was in his 30s. That's why my grandparents, like, he went back to school and he taught. I mean, and worked two jobs, and my mom worked, and he'd say, find your education. It doesn't matter when you find it, and it's all around you. Life is an education. Life's a work of art, right? So
Yeah.
what you decide to put in it, or write in your journal, or walk down the street, or what you do that day, you're that character. And so be the character you want to be in your own life. I think
Mm.
that's what I would say. And that to me, I sometimes I go, gosh, I don't have my camp for kids, or I wish I had my own kid show. And then I'll look at myself with my reindeer boots or something. I was like, I'm a walking kid show.
I was about to say, like, you are. I think that's just every single day, 24/7. That is you in the best
It's
possible
like
way.
the
I mean
rent
that as
is
well. I
cheaper.
mean, like, yeah, the amount of happiness that you have brought across your career to everyone I'm sure that you've interacted with, it's, immeasurable, probably, quite frankly, like,
So I really don't have an agenda. I tell people I have ESP, eat, sleep, and play. That's like a
yeah,
puppy.
there
I
you go.
just really love what I do. I've been very fortunate. I've had to work really, really hard. I
Yeah.
mean, don't think that this hasn't been, it has been really hard.
Mm, mm,
And I've had to do it in really heartbreaking situations, and
yeah.
where I think I can't do it. I don't know where I'm going to get the energy to do this, and I didn't have it, I knocked on a lot of doors. There wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of, like, especially, so yeah, but it didn't.
Perseverance, a lot of
Yeah,
perseverance in there.
yeah,
Mm,
I didn't
mm.
say, oh, I can't do that because somebody said I can't do that. I had a dream about one time. I had a dream where, um it was such a weird dream. It was like my dad, I grew up with Kmart, right? The Kmart
Hmm.
was a big
No, I
deal.
know. I know
You
Kmart.
go
That's
to
my generation
Kmart?
too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So I grew up with that, and I also lived through the AIDS epidemic, so I have a very, very intense feeling about,
Mm,
I keep performing because I saw my friends melt before my eyes, and I know that if they were here, they would be performing. So
mm.
I perform because I know how lucky and blessed I am to do it. But I remember going in. The dream was I went into the Kmart, and for whatever reason, this Kmart had a potter's bunch of potter wheel classes. It's a
Of
dream.
course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I walked up to the counter and I asked if I could go behind the counter and throw a pot. And the guy says, no, I'm sorry, there's no room for you. And then my dad came up. He goes, what's wrong? And I go, there's no room for me. And my dad goes, come here, make room. And he goes in the back and he finds a space for me, and I was like, and I think deep inside, you just have to make room. There's room for everybody.
Mm. Beautifully put. I mean, that's that. I like that. I like that advice, and that, quite frankly, might be a nice way to put a bow on this conversation. I can't believe we've blown through it. We're over an hour now in this conversation. I feel like literally we just got started. I feel like we just got started, but like that speaks to like all that we've covered, and I think also like just the again, I'm going to use it one last time, the magic of what you represent and who you are, and all that you shared. I mean, like it was a magical conversation on mine, and I know listeners are really going to love it as well. Really quickly though, I mean, outside of your work on Sesame Street, where else can people find you?
Me? I'm sorry, I just like was here the whole time. I'm Lolly Lollipop, and yeah, we didn't really go into my work with
we didn't, Lolly. No,
and I am like it. Sorry,
maybe Lolly, you can take it from here. I mean, where we can find out more about you, and
I'm of the theater, so I'm a live performer because I don't have my show yet, and I do mean yet. You better keep working on that. Okay, that's right. I think the best. You're distracting. She's distracting. I'm just so bad at social media. So I guess I need to say we do Instagram. I'm not so bad at, we have Humor with Heart. We've been working on this for a couple of years, proof of concept, and we've got child psychologists working with us. We pretty much say yes to everything. We work with the Manhattan Star Academy. We work with the Dystonia Foundation. We work with, Broadway Inspirational Voices. So if we're doing something, it'll be on our Instagram. We have a website. Our website's kind of a hot mess right now because you can kind of get an idea what we do, but we do so much more. What we do is community impact. We inspire rich people and corporations to give monies to nonprofits, and those nonprofits hire my team to go in and write shows, curriculum, do videos, create artwork, to bring everybody in the community together to shine a light on things like that. So I think that's the best way to follow me. My other Instagram is Lolly Lardpop. I don't really use my name, Leslie, too much because I feel if you know Lolly, then you know me. She's been around 24 years now. Next year will be 25. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm really hoping that we've been wanting to do a comedy album. 25 years of doing 5. I have a CD, old one out called Spunk and Sass. I wrote a musical called Wake Up You're Weird.
Yeah.
That is another CD, but we're really trying
to get this next one.
At the marketing, but I think right now, if you think Humor with a Heart, we're trying to do, and you can sign up on our mailing list on our website or on our Instagram. And then you'll hopefully it won't go to spam, but it lets you know what we're doing.
Awesome.
But that's
yeah. Well, in the show notes for this, I'll certainly have links to all of that so listeners can check it out and are able to find it.
And of course, Sesame Street. I am living proof that dreams come true, and I still have some dreams, dreams don't have an expiration date. So I guess what I would say to you is like, I still want to write a Broadway show. I still have a screenplay for Lolly. I still have all these ideas that are just waiting to find homes. And, I look at people like Marilyn May, who you should interview. You should really interview. She's 96 years old and she's still doing cabarets at 54
That's amazing. Yeah.
Phenomenal. And I just think that I would tell you, if it's something you want to do, don't wait and say, well, there's no room for me, or make room. There's room for everybody, and there's ideas, and do your own ideas, which also too I think is important.
Yeah. It's been a true pleasure here, Leslie. I have, like I said, enjoyed this from start to finish, and hanging on every word that you've said. And again, I know listeners are going to be the exact same, so I can't thank you enough. Oh, Absolutely. Absolutely. So thanks again for taking some time to join the program. True pleasure.